All right, one and all, welcome back to the channel. We got some deep stuff to go through. It's time for a full breakdown of RedBull, Wololo, El Reinado. There's been a few people putting their videos up with differing opinions, different takes. I know there's been a lot of takes, especially if you head over to the Reddit sphere, a few people on the Twitch side, the YouTube side. But there's only a limited number of people who are actually there, and a limited number of people who can provide the level of insight that I'm going to, and even fewer people who will. So, and that's just because, honestly, like, many people don't have access or, like, insights or whatever to the things that we're seeing. So, I even, wait for it, boom! Very cheap little note section here. So I figured we'd go this way about it, and we could work through. Sorry if your comments got cut off, but I think we need the space, you know? So let me just quickly do that. So, we'll go down the list. We'll start off the stuff. First things first, the venue, right? Like, this was, and I frankly said it to the RedBull Wololo guys, the best RedBull Wololo they have ran. Without a doubt, I think you're delusional if you argue that. I can't speak fully for the remote viewing experience or any glance pieces of it. Definitely, like, some issues that roll through there. Unfortunately, tech issues are always bound to happen on a new location. But, overall, it felt like RedBull Wololo had a castle, right? It felt like a real castle. And I mean, a little bit of shade for Heidelberg. In Heidelberg, because I've been at both, right? I was at RedBull Wololo Legacy, for those that don't know, as well as this one. RedBull Wololo Legacy in Heidelberg, we had part of a castle. We didn't have great control over the castle. We were there, and we kind of existed within it. It was a cool event, but it didn't feel as much like we were in a castle, in control of a castle, as much as we were doing a little bit of a side tour. We were kind of off in a room, too shameful for, like, Germany to fully process that we were there, right? But with the Almodovar del Rio Castillo, the place near Cordoba, the entire castle was taken over. Like, I wonder if I can find some shots of it to really emphasize. I think we've got maybe, if I quickly just screen capture and switch over, there's probably some things I can show you. Like, these shots here, like, you could see it very clearly. I mean, it's strong to stay in place, but, like, they had caked it everywhere. There was Wololo banners in every single parapet, every single tower, every single piece of it was caked. There was RedBull umbrellas everywhere. I remember I said to them, it kind of felt like I was at a RedBull experience, right? If anyone who's ever watched them do for example, their extreme sports and whatnot, they really go all out on branding and making it part of it. And this felt that way, and so many levels. It was truly a real castle. It was scary, actually. I remember when we were driving up the hill. The hill is so steep, and the passageway is so thin. I was a little bit worried we were going to teeter over and just crash, right? I was like, if the driver of this vehicle sneezes, we're going over the side of a cliff. We're gone. So really cool. Like, there is expansive amounts of flat plains around it, and just this giant mound with a castle on top. So, you know, it ticked every box. It's like, I think the way someone described me is like, Heidelberg, you try and invade that castle, it's going to be tough, but you can see it happening. This feels like not even worth it. Like, not even worth the amount of lives that we lost trying to invade this place. So the venue really smashed. Getting there was not too bad. I think it was about 30, 40 minutes by coach. Obviously, the logistics of getting in from different airports, and for the most, that was quite smooth running. With where we were staying hotel-wise, really nice place. Unfortunately, I didn't have an entire amount of time to explore, so that I can't really comment on the locals of Cordoba too much. But the overall feeling around the venue was really well executed. Food was really good in the early points of the day. Later in the day, a little bit tougher, like just munching on sandwiches. But I think that's because they shift the schedule and plans changed. But I don't know if people really want to hear more about the venue. I think they want to hear more about, well, life as talent, like what things were like. So kind of a weird one for me, right? Because almost felt like the diva flying in early to just exist until it was time. And I'm going to take this off because it's dealing with my green screen. So kind of felt a little bit like a diva waiting to work because I only had to work for the weekend. So there's that kind of feeling. I've said this before. When you're at an event, you don't really feel like you're part of the talent until you do something, right? I've had it at ALGS when I first done my first Apex Legends tournament. Kind of felt like I wasn't really part of this crew until I hopped on the broadcast. So that in mind, the guys made me feel as welcome as I ever have, right? Like, you know, they remember me from before. And I think the first time I done a RedBull Wololo, I was kind of just the guy there. Coming back for the second time, really kind of felt like I had a different attitude with some individuals around it, like, yeah, okay, he's here, he's part of this now. So, Nilly in particular has always been a wonderful person to me. Like, I absolutely love that guy. I still wish he was involved in Age of Empires 4. I know why he isn't. I know how tough it is. I know that guy broke himself, mind, body, and soul, doing everything he can for our game. And I think we're all lucky to still have him involved on the World's Edge side, because he's a force for good. So, really big shout out to him. And obviously the rest of them just absolutely phenomenal to work with. Great to meet Zoe for the first time. For those who don't know, Zoe has a lot of experience. She has more experience than me, I think. I don't think anyone on the broadcast but Zoe has more experience in esports events than me, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to double check that, but I'm fairly confident of that. And that's not me like flexing whatever, it's just me telling you how much experience she's got. I've been doing this for over half a decade. So she's an absolute superstar. And I think, it was great to have Winston there, Winston in person, man, because it was great to really experience with him for the first time, because he'd done RedBull Wololo Legacy, but he was there just for one, and this was almost more entirely encompassing. On the talent side with like Wham, and we'll talk about that more in the grand finals, done a great job for his first cast. I try to do whatever I can to make him feel good. So we should go through the different games, right? So AoE 1 was kind of a weird one, guys, for a few reasons, because AoE 1 had a very limited qualifier, and the more I learned about AoE 1, the more shocked I was, because AoE 1 only allowed Vietnamese people, but I think only allowed them from certain areas of the country, which was unfortunate, because in particular there's a player in China that is very, very talented. Like, he could potentially beat Chimse Dinang in a grand finals. So I hope AoE 1 comes back, and I actually hope RedBull takes more of a collective, holistic approach continuously, where they are the anchor point for all the Age of games. I think Age of Empires 1, I'd love to see primarily there be a Vietnamese stacked spots, but maybe one or two from outside come in, and you find a medium server to play on, because I'd love to see us get the absolute best guaranteed. There's no doubt Chimse, he's been on top for a very long time, but I feel like there was probably more people that could have participated there. I'm going to leak the deets now. I had not played or watched AoE 1 for about 18 years. So I played it in my childhood. I remember saying at the time, like, I could probably do all the cheat codes for you. But, this is the importance of prep. This is the importance of, like, learning on the fly, leveraging people who are very knowledgeable, like Winston Waffles, who knows this game inside and out. I called him, like, the heart of AoE 1 for many years, and I really think that's true. The guy really went all out for that game. But, I remember, and we'll address it a little bit later, but in regards to another game that I'm going to talk about that I done, some of the community, not all the community, there was just a few people in the community that had a feeling like, he doesn't stream the game, so how does he know the game? That's how I know the game. It's my profession, it's my career. I've done it for over half a decade, and you know what? At that stage, you get to hang around for a good reason. I put the hours in, I put the work in, and I make sure that I try to bring the best out of the people I'm with. So, on to Age of Empires 4. This was a tricky one, because my big worry going into RedBull Wololo is that the grand finals would not do justice by the game that we now have. And they didn't. The grand finals, unfortunately, were always going to be a bit of a coin flip. Because when you have one match that is 2 months away from when the meta was last played, there's a lot of confusion and dispersion. And one of the big problems you have here is with Age of Empires 4, you had two players coming in with different ideas of how the meta is going to work, of how things are going to develop. And this is typical, right? Whenever you get to a tournament, a major tournament, I see this in Dota 2, I see this in Apex, everyone has a concept, an idea of what is the right way to play the game. And they will come into it, and they will discover whether they're right or wrong, and then adapt, right? But the thing is, in this particular format, you couldn't adapt. A best of 5 is way too little time to do anything different. Right? Because the draft isn't even being reset. So you are going in and you are assuming you're right. And if you're wrong, you are dead wrong. And that's kind of unfortunate, because I was really gutted for the Age of Empires 4 Grand Finals. I really wanted PUBG to just even get one game, because the moment that opening game happened, it was rough. I'm thinking about the optics of, like, we are reintroducing Age of Empires 4 to a wider crowd. AoE 2 people, AOM people, AoE 1 people, even people beyond any of the Age of games. Because, guys, when you're talking about these World Cup equivalents, like the International, Worlds, whatever, people flock back to a game when they weren't paying attention before. And Age of Empires 4's Game 1 did not do us any justice. The problem of game 1 is you could already see the players were a little bit hesitant as they were warming up. They were feeling each other out. They didn't want to overcommit because they didn't want to throw an opening game, because in a best of 5, that's 20% of the potential games, and actually it's a huge edge given over. So everyone played, I want to say, more reluctant, more defensive. Very calculated, very strategic by Marine Lord. He didn't make many gruesome mistakes. He got the win on that one. Then came game 2. And actually, this is a perfect time where I could be playing the stuff in the background, right? So in came game 2, as I clicked the wrong scene. Game 2 was a bit of a nightmare. So like the reason game 2 was a nightmare is strategically to people like us that like know the game very well. It was really good. And this is what I was talking about the first game. There was a lot of hesitance to commit, which makes sense. But like when you're trying to create a spectacle, it's bad. And yes, by the way, this is what I was talking about. Whole castle takeover, all Red Bull themed. You really felt like this was a Red Bull event. More so than anyone they've done before. So we get into game 2, and the biggest problem in game 2 is it's an interesting concept. It almost caught him off guard. There's a few slip-ups and mistakes, like Marine Lord is playing way too close to these aggressive docks later on when demo ships could be coming out, and he doesn't know if they're coming out. But the issue you have is that fundamentally, water is still not that interesting to watch for the majority of casual players. It is a bloody nightmare to look at. It's polarizing, it throws you off, and all that has is impactful moments like demo ships. I love demo ships. One of the few units that really goes, wow. It's hard to witness, and there's a few reasons why. Like, one issue I highlighted to the devs is when you get into these big fights, what makes water really terrible is everything becomes diluted. It's very hard to identify. Everything becomes clustered, and you even get this issue where you don't see it from Puppy Paw's perspective, but if we were on Marine Lord's perspective right now, we would see the blue outlines of the shader for his ships, and that makes the fights look more muddied and confusing. Another really big takeaway I had from this grand final is like water can be good, but when it's rationed, and I think maps like Atoll that we're working on does that. It's weird because Holy Island to the most technical players is a really cool map to witness and experience, but anyone lower than that, it's just you switch off kind of. It doesn't really register. And then we had game 3. Game 3, this was tough, man. I could feel it with Wham on the mic. Like he held it together really well for a guy who was basically watching his bro get beat down. Because the thing people have to keep in mind is also for Wham had practiced with Puppy Paw relentlessly. They had prepped, they were confident in their ideas. So like for him to keep his composure and do as well as he did in a situation where you're casting this game out, where you have to make assertions and confidently say things that are going to happen, while also subconsciously being like, he's losing. Not only is that's my bro losing, but you also have to think from his perspective, we both believe that this is the way the game's meant to be played. And then Marine Lord is coming in and doing this, right? So if you imagine you're in Wham's position in a cast of this caliber, in a grand finals, on a LAN, your first ever like major LAN, proper LAN, where there's a big live audience in the castle, S-tier event, and you have a confident idea of what you're meant to say on how the game functions. And then you have the emotional trauma of your bro is getting 3-0'd, combined with the fact that like now the things you say on the cast, you're probably double thinking in your brain because you are like the things you believed work clearly don't work because you're losing, right? So like for him to do such a good job on one of his first ever casts, his first proper cast, with all those variables in consideration, I think he done a remarkable job given those circumstances. It's not easy. Right? What I do for a living is not easy. A lot of people think it is. They try it for the first time and they apologize to me afterwards. I've had it so many times over the last 6 years where like pros or whatever think it's easy and they discover it's not. So credit to him for doing what he done. This game also credit to Puppy Paw for continuing to do what he done. There was some critical slip-ups. So for a start, he went under mesh before going siege engineering, and then he done steeled arrow much later. He needed siege engineering straight away to get into the first ram, and then probably steeled arrow afterwards to do enough damage to the horseman. But what I want to give credit to him for Puppy Paw is like he kept consistently trying, whereas this could have been a very boring and underwhelming final game if he just walked home and teched up. If he'd done that, he's dead, right? This was at least, damn, okay, like, exciting, he tries again, right? Like a true ram trying to break through a wall. But, you know, the unfortunate reality of these games is they didn't do justice by Age of Empires 4 at all. I think The games that I hosted on Preseason 9 looked better for this. I think the show match we cast today between Anatan and Marine Lord looked better for this. And that's because the Anatan Marine Lord environment, they play against each other all the time. So they have an idea of what each want to do, and they address each other, right? And, you know, you could argue also Puppy Paw, this is his first time on, like, a stage of this caliber. Like, I think he played stage on Legacy, but it was kind of different. So there's all these issues, but, like, you know, I heard some issues around graphics, and I think the graphics, yeah, they looked really grainy. I think they're using something that pops the definition of AoE 2, but AoE 4 looks different and it doesn't work the same way. AoE 4 typically has bitrate issues, and I don't blame RedBull for this. It's something that's very hard to gauge ahead of time until you've hosted tournaments. So like we've had it before in EGC where I've hosted on the channel, and because of my default resolution is 1440p, it would cause a lot more distortion with the quality. Things like this really affect it because AoE 4 is from a stream perspective not a great game to encode. It is very intensive and the quality isn't great. So it was unfortunate that that happened, but hopefully that's kind of like a learning lesson next time. But the biggest takeaway, right, is like the Anatan Marine Lord set we done today was more interesting because these two have differing ideas. They haven't clashed with each other in over 2 months. Their closest interaction is an intermediary, like maybe a game of Anatan, but they're fundamentally playing different games. And that's tough to deal with, right? So, you know, I'm a bit guarded because I wanted better games to really show people, yeah, AoE 4 has come this far. Look how great this game is now. But with that being said, the viewership was pretty good. So 2 peaked at 85k, averaged 37.5, but I think that's across the entire event, not for the final day. What was really impressive for 4 is that 4 had the tail end of the stream. It peaked at 44, averaged 40. Now, you can argue that it already pulled the viewership from the amazing Leary Viper semifinals, but to hold the numbers as it did, the fact that Kataga had like 10k plus people watching, the Germans had over 5,000 people watching, this should be, hopefully, in RedBull's eyes, a very big success, more than would have been expected out of AoE4 given the history. We'll talk more about the other statistics in a moment, but we'll focus on 4 because there's a few other things that need to be addressed with 4. 4 has some big issues. And I really, really realized it at this event. From a spectating perspective, from a feedback perspective, it's not a perfect game. So for a start, something that AoE2 does much better than AoE4 is feedback. When you use a unit, the sound effects make you know you've used the unit a certain way. The animations, even though they are like lower rares compared to AoE4, feel more meaningful because when you watch a lot of Age of Empires 4 outside of maybe Siege, what you'll notice is the unit's attacks and whatever are less defined. For a start, it feels like crossbow bolts and arrow bolts should be clearer, that you can see them better. Think about the difference of how watching a fight with incendiary arrows and watching one without feels. That's a big deal. On top of that, knights feel like they should really be lifting their sword a lot more for a swing. Horsemen should be doing more than just this little pokey stab. These almost sound nitpicky until you realize when you're watching a game, this matters a lot. Right? And it's crazy, and it's being said in chat, like, it's very hard to distinguish if you're not familiar. That's a bad sign. Compared to something like StarCraft Stormgate, defining these units, distinguishing these units, should be a piece of cake because our game is using historically relevant elements. You look, you know. So the fact that we have so much visibility issues is a problem. I've already highlighted the devs. There needs to be a look taken at the terrain. The terrain is a huge issue in this game because we have way too much foliage. The foliage dilutes anything that happens as units don't pop away from the background as much. I also am going to start exploring with Vodka and EGC and everyone the idea of zooming in 3 to 4 notches because when you watch this, and we are watching on a big screen, it's too small, right? Like, on average, there's way too much zoom out in AoE4. I think Drongo said something similar recently about Age of Myth, how games are spoiling people, and it's true. You're so far away from the action, you can't actually experience the action. You're so detached that this might as well just be a little emblem and not a real unit that's there, right? And, like, this is what I mean with the fights. You see what I mean? Like, you can barely see the horsemen stabbing, the lancers as well, the Nesta bees are kind of weird. We also have an issue with the health bars where the ideal world is you don't want health bars like this, you want smart bars, but you can't do that right now because in spectator mode in AoE4, when you use the smart health bars, people have commented on it on my videos. I actually have smart health bars on, but they bug out. So my only option is to select all units. But yeah, this was Yeah, that trophy, by the way, was sick. I thought it was made of sandstone. It's not. It's made of wood. They just roughed it up to look like sandstone. So, yeah. I also kissed that trophy, so technically it now belongs to me. That's how things work. Didn't kiss Marine Lord. I got better taste. Sorry, Marine Lord. But, yeah, I think that these type of issues need to be addressed in AoE4. And if we do, our viewer experience rockets through the roof. There was a few other things I fed back to the devs. I said camera angles. Overall, like part of the reason why the cameras, like it's not just the height, it's also the angle makes you feel detached from everything happening in the game. That needs to be overhauled. So an idea of being able to pivot camera more would work really well because I think overall panoramic view has seemed like it's a positive, but it's actually a negative. But like one of the most obvious things you can think of that like sound differences I was talking about earlier, when I was listening to Archers in AoE2, it's like bassy. You could feel the release. A lot of units you just don't have that feeling, and it detaches you from the game. It doesn't make you feel like everything's as impactful as it should be. One positive thing was I talked to 1 or 2 players from AoE2, and they thought our water looked better than theirs. So that's good. Our water still has a long way to go, but the Age of Empires water being messy is not a 4 exclusive thing. It's actually almost a universal thing. I think Myth even has its own issues to a certain degree. So, good to know we're not alone on that. But yeah, I talked to them. They said they're going to maybe look into the possibility of like messing with the foliage a bit because that does feel like one. I said small details as well, like blacksmiths should really light up when they're teching and only when they're teching. So you have extra feedback elements and details that are good to pay attention to. I think that adds a cool, subtle layer of depth that's really nice to see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I dropped off the top of my head. Like those are definitely the big ones. And I also said we need limited time game modes because I'm going to now talk about something controversial. Empire Wars. We spent a lot of time on 4 because you guys want it, but we'll have plenty of time for the other. I think they should have kept Empire Wars for this tournament. People aren't going to like to hear that, but here's the thing. It would have been tough. It would have been something to work through, but it would have been something to work through. Would have been, like, this is the thing. Everyone who moans about Empire Wars and didn't even bother to play it to help gather data on it, that's part of the problem. I've talked with the devs, and they had no data to go on. That's why Empire Wars never evolved. That's why Empire Wars never got improved. They had no pub data. They had no info at all to actually try to develop it into a game mode that could have been good. And the shame of that is because Empire Wars was a completely resounding flop, the chances of getting any other type of limited time game modes is gone. Likely gone. I hope it's not, because I've tried to encourage them, because I think limited time game modes would be a genius move for Age of Empires 4. Imagine if you had these game modes that only existed for one season, right? Where you could drastically experiment with things. Imagine if every unit in the game could capture sacred sites, for example. Imagine if you create a 1.5 times speed simulation mode. Make these separate, make them for one season, and do something drastically different, and then you can adapt what you think fits. Because the biggest issue right now is due to the patching process, the development process, it takes way too long to experiment with something. Like, if you introduce something that could break the game, like, they're so ballsy what they're doing with Season 9, with the siege rechange. Because if that was bad, we'd be stuck with it for weeks and weeks because of the patching process. You have to go through Microsoft, Confirmation, Steam, everything, right? So having limited time game modes would solve that. And I think that's what Empire Wars should have been treated as, with more incentive to play, and then we would have got the data. Now, you could argue whether we need Empire Wars, but I think something that people sleep on is the fact that RedBull wants something different. Every game they go in, they want to be different. They don't want to be ESL. They don't want to be PGL. The whole fixture is on creating a unique and different event in everything they do. And I actually respect them a lot for it. It reminds me of, I was using Midas mode to explain to them like a different example in Dota 2. Because if everyone does the same thing, like we've just seen the same thing on repeat. You could argue it gets the most talented person, whatever, but from a branding perspective, you lose your identity. So, a big problem around Empire Wars is, yeah, we might be right in that it wasn't a good fit because of the current format it's in. But it was never going to get there because there was no positive solution to something different, which is what I know RedBull wanted. There was just an argument to have a 1v1 vanilla. And I think in general, I don't like certain people's resistance to different things. One of the amazing things about esports is how you evolve. One of the most incredible things about esports is how you adapt to something new. Like Mr. and Recon adapted to new retold when people were still playing Age of Myth like it was from 2016, and they were wrong, right? That's incredible to witness. And I think AoE 4 would benefit from having these limited time game modes that tries different things. And then we can have tournaments that do different things. Because we do cool things around drafts, like having your draft picks from your opponent. I want to create a format where you basically apply a value to different civs. And as they get picked more, they cost more. These type of things. We can do those cool things, but like mechanically in-game, I would like to see more exploration of almost like... For Dota 2, it has like turbo mode, for example. League of Legends has ARAM. Like... Try these formats and see. I've talked for a long time about potentially doing a crafted maps tournament to see if we're actually right in that generated maps is better. Because we don't have any... Like, stick with me on this because I know people like pitchforks because Empire Wars talk, but be real on this. What example do we have of competitive formatting where we've seen crafted maps used? Anyone? Nope. Never happened. Never happened, right? What example do we have this 1.5 simulation game mode being used? Never happened, right? What about sacred sites being captured in Feudal Age? Never happened. For every civ, right? Every unit. Never happened. We're so fixated on the idea that we just got it right straight away. And I think that's left us very resistant in a negative way to change, which is why, like, Empire Wars got treated the way it did. People didn't even want to try, and I get why, right? But, like, the point is, after Empire Wars was what it was, the idea of doing anything different just gets almost stigmatized by certain parts of the community. Like, when EGC done a 12 villager start, for Christ's sake, or, like, no walls, some people were trying to, like, revolt against the idea of the tournament even existing. How is that positive? Right? These people want to come in and they want to actually offer more money to the scene. You could use this as an opportunity to say, I think this would be the better way, but, like, you know, trial and error to get there, right? And I think sometimes when I think about it, the community, the competitive side of the community is very resilient to the idea of anything being different, which I don't like. Because I think we're leaving a lot of potential on the table. So, you know, pretty hot take there, maybe. I think genuinely, like, did Waffles eat the shoe? No, we've got to get him a shoe to eat, but we'll get to that in a second. But I think, you know, in general, this is something we need to start looking inwards with, because we'll get to it more because I'm going to address it here, but there's some stuff we really need to talk about. I think I actually already went into some of the changes needed, so whoopsie on that. I'm going to, like, put that here. But I will talk more on this when we get to this point, because this is big and important. So, format, lessons learned. Some of the maps probably, like, could have been different maps and would have been improved. I think the other issue for them is, like, a best of 5 did not do justice for AoE 4, did not do justice for their tournament. It's too short. It's too punishing. You don't really get a feel for what's really going to happen or anything. I think, like, in an ideal world, the format for AoE 4, and this probably goes for all of them, 2 approaches. One, if you really want to keep it down to just the grand finalists, run the event at the time they ran Age of Myth. Age of Myth was so healthy because you had the qualifiers, and then less than a month later, you were flying them out. Whereas 4 had this really weird limbo of 2 months, which I think also damaged the ecosystem quite a bit, because, like, no one wanted to do anything, right? Because everyone's going to be getting ready for RedBull. So, you know, you either do it close together, or if you want the smoothness of logistics, the other way you do it is just invite 4 players. Like, my hopes is that 4 has done enough here, same as Myth, I think definitely done enough, and maybe 1 as well, to convince them that, like, 4 players makes a lot more sense. And you can do maybe, like, the double elim, some type of format to make it kind of more balanced. If they use it in a position like this again, like, the cool thing about Almodovar is the castle, you have these towers. So you see these towers back here? So this one here was where the group stage was cast for AoE 2. But possibly, and it would have a higher budget to it, but you could simultaneously run 4 to a Myth in each of these each of these turrets, right? With limited budget, I don't think it has to be out there. Maybe there's, like, it's probably going to be like 20, 30, 40k more to spend, but I think it could be worth it for them to really become the holistic home of all Age of. But let's move on to the next part of the discussion. So I should really do this with these, shouldn't I? Final Force in 1, because I was kind of, like, quick on 1. 1 did get a justifiable game. The 3rd game of AoE 1 was hype as all hell. I'm glad they got that. I'm heartbroken we didn't get any of that for 4. We didn't get anything that delivered what we've had. Elite Classic 2, for example, done so much more for, like, market the game with these games than what 4 done. And that's sad because the current meta for 4 is a lot better than what we currently have. But like, this is learning lessons. And by the way, I don't hold any grudge against RedBull Wololo. I think RedBull Wololo, like I said this before, they didn't need to include us. I'll talk more about that in a bit though. So we done changes. Let's go ahead, format. Oh my god, dude. Wrong thing. So let's talk about Myth. Age of Myth was a success, a resounding success. I would say based on the numbers, which I can pull up for you guys now, it done phenomenally well. I keep pressing the wrong scene. Look at that. That's incredible. That was second series the day after AoE 1. It peaked at almost 50,000 views and had 43,500 people watching on average. That is a phenomenal success for Age of Mythology. Do I think it's going to eclipse 4 or be the new biggest Age of on the block? Probably not. I'm not alone in this. I talked to some people who love Myth inside out, and I said, I think the path to Mythology being big is off of this 3 years from now, maybe, release Age of Mythology 2. What Age of Myth now needs to become probably the biggest in the entire franchise is a brand new game. Because you always will limit yourself when it's an old game. It can be the best game in the world, but like people typically don't pick up new, like old games if it's a new game to them, right? Gatekeeping because people are just much better. Old graphics, whatever it may be, keeps them away no matter how incredible the game is. But this was an incredible showing of Age of Myth. These two played their hearts out like absolute champions. Mr. said it, and I agree, people don't realize how close Mr. was to getting absolutely dunked in Game 2 and 3. Game 1, he was just dominant, right? But Game 2, Recon turned up big time. He almost had him. There was a little bit of hesitance, and I think sometimes Recon does still kind of put Mr. on a pedestal because he idolizes him. And I wonder if he would have like been a bit more against someone else. But I think Recon knows he has this issue. I talked about it before. Like, if I had a hidden cup, how much better would he do against Lucifer, Vortex, Beastie, these type of people, right? But it shows you how far Recon's come so quickly, man, and how far ahead of everyone else these two are currently. I mean, they delivered a masterclass. This is an entertaining game. A little bit confusing because of the UI. People asked about, like, why didn't we flip the UI? We didn't flip the UI for a really good reason here, because Red's on the left side, right? But we've got his stuff on the right. It's because there's a bug currently in Capture Age where if you flip this, the bars do not flip, but their colors do. So all of a sudden, like, if we flipped it, it would be saying that Recon has 5 units and Mr. has 8, but the colors wouldn't do it right. So that's why we made the judgment call. It only really impacted that game. We got into Game 3, and this should have sold people. This was the one. This is the crowning jewel game. This game showed people everything Age of Mythology could be. This game showed people that Age of Mythology, from a hype perspective, can probably eclipse any other Age of game in existence for spectacle, right? And it's funny as well, because they had an Inferno play, which is the big Firewolf, and it didn't even hit. It completely, it hit a TC. It was kind of irrelevant. But it was still epic to look at. And I remember a game from the qualifiers where that ended the entire game, right? And it looked incredible. Like, no other game in the entire Age of franchise delivers the spectacle that Myth does. And I was talking to Mr. about this. Like, some players, I remember, like, I think Papa said, you know, one thing he doesn't like is, like, he feels as if someone gets Age 4 and you're just dead, right? Because they earthquake your base, GG. But Mr. made a very fair point, and this preparation. If you don't think you can end the game before they reach Age 4, act like they're going to reach Age 4, right? So you don't build all your farms around your TC, you build them off to the side, you build your houses off to the side. Otherwise, an Earthquake is going to end your game. And I agree with that. Like, Myth feels polarizing to some people who have played other Age of games because it's completely different. And if you play this same approach you would in 4 and 2, where you only play condensed, you are going to get punished for it. So, you know, also these two, man, like, dude, they're like, I mean, they're like brothers, but sometimes it feels like they're father and son. They are so incredibly close. Like, Recon was even at Mister's wedding, right? And this is classic Mister. I said it on the cast. He literally just starts talking to him about what went wrong in the game. That's classic Mister. He just can't help himself. He loves to break everything down. But this guy, man, he's been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. Yo, who are these two cuties? Oh, man. But yeah, that was an incredible one, right? So, like, I think Age of Myth, if they've started working on a 2, if they've got a team working on a 2 that releases in a few years, I think that could be bigger than any of the Age of games. If it keeps the heart of Mythology, and they make a true sequel, not a remaster, not a definitive edition, but like real new game, it has the potential to go as big as Age of Empires 4's launch. And if they get the balance right with that one, they can do what we couldn't, which is they can retain. So yeah, I think Myth deserves to still be there. 4, I hope, is still there. It's just unfortunate that the Grand Finals didn't give the hype it actually displays. But I hope that that's going to make a return as well. It definitely deserves to. So let's talk about AoE 2, because there's a few things there, right? And obviously, like, I don't know everything about AoE 2, but I'll try to, like, you know, I pick stuff up quickly. AoE 2 is one of those games that I've watched on the side in the past. I've watched T90 for years. Love those games. I've followed it loosely. It's kind of like with Counter-Strike as well, where I say if I had work in the scene, I'd probably be more involved in watching and participating because I could afford the time. I think Age of Empires 2 is a very good game. Some people are going to disagree with that. They're going to cringe, and maybe some people are going to follow me with that. But for what it is, a game to last that long and have that type of like community around it is not easy. You have to have a good game for it to last that long. I don't think it's going to ever be the next big RTS because it has the same issue that Age of Mythology Retold has, which is it's a remastering of a previous perfect game. So like this is a very different situation. And the thing is that in this environment, AoE 2, I think, has obviously always been the heart of RedBull Wololo, right? This is undeniable. And I know some people felt snubbed or whatever AoE 4 because we used to have the big tournament, and this time we didn't have the big tournament. But like, what I want people to really appreciate is this is still AoE, like it has been AoE 2. It's always been AoE 2. It doesn't mean it can't become these other things, but the way we act matters a lot. The game's delivered. The semi-finals between Leary and Viper was incredible. That was setting up for potentially the best storyline you could have had at the event. Hero was expected to dominate. Tato was already out. I low-key was thinking about it from a narrative standpoint, and I think I wanted Viper to win, and here's why. Hero was expected to win. Leary was expected to make grand finals. He always makes grand finals, right? He's made almost all of them, if I remember correctly. He's made the last like 7 or 8 grand finals on LAN. Viper's comeback was incredible, and that set up an amazing story because you have to remember with Viper's wrist issues, there's been a lot of talk as to whether he'll even play anymore, right? For him to come in like that was absolutely incredible. So like that was like for storyline, I think that would have been the most epic one, but Hera having a dominant year, like I think it was 8 back-to-back S-tier events, incredible for him and well-earned victory, man. But I don't like the drama around, like, what was it? So there's a patrol thing. There's a patrol interaction with a stand ground stance, rather, in AoE 2 that allows you to do some pretty ludicrous things. So let me see if I can find it, because Nilly actually, like, looked at it this week, and it is really broken what you can do with it. So I'm trying to find it now. But the so has anyone got a clip? Someone clip me if you've got it. I imagine someone saved it. But basically, this is I'm trying to think. It's kind of on par with how egregious animation canceling could be in AoE 4. But if you guys remember, we had a tournament where people done that, and we didn't ban them. We fixed it in the rule set. So all this crap talk that I've seen around in 2 or 4 because people looking for ammunition, wherever you are, is wrong. Absolutely wrong. What Herod done is he utilized mechanics available to him in the game, which were not banned by the rulebook, which were not fixed by the devs, that has existed in the game for a long time. So I actually don't like that people piled on Hera and accused him of mechanic abusing. And really big shout out to Viper, by the way, because he came in and defended it and defended his win. Because Viper is an absolute lad. He's incredible. I love that guy. But, you know, I'm always reminded of a certain thing from Dota 2, for anyone who has not seen it. There was something very infamous in Dota 2 called the Fountain Hook. And this is where we get into the discussion of, like, exploitation and cheating. Exploits and cheating are different things, and I don't like when people muddy the two. Exploitation of poorly designed game mechanics is like, fix your freaking game, right? It's entirely different. Why can I not find the Fountain Hook for Dota 2 Ti? This is being a bit weird. So Found hook should be coming up, yeah. So the thing is, like, I don't like this approach of, an exploit is like cheating. If it's not in the rules, it's not cheating. That's always been my take. That will always be my take, right? If someone finds something creative to win the game, to exploit the game, whatever, they should be rewarded for it, right? Big golf clap. Oversight by the devs. Okay, fix it next time. But, like, I don't like this idea that, oh, how shameful. He found something to get a competitive advantage. Yes. Yes, he did. Like, if you think about it, in some ways, that's no different than, like, picking HRE in AoE 4 right now. They're broken because devs had oversight and made a slip-up with balancing them. Do we, like, say players should be banned because they picked it? No, we ban it, right? Or, like, if we thought it was absolutely broken, we'd ban it from use in a rulebook, right? Like, I think, yeah, Fnatic gets mentioned here because wasn't it Fnatic had that Counter-Strike game, the infamous Counter-Strike game where they had the full team stack on Counter-Strike where they stood on top of each other and sniped the enemy. That did get reverted because there was a rule. Look at that, guys. Rules are helpful. So there was a rule in the handbook that said any, like, I think it's pixel jumps aren't allowed. Pixel jumps are where you're, like, able to stand on top of each other. So they covered that, right? But there was nothing about that in AoE2. Should there have been something about that in AoE2? 100%. Like, watching it back, it looked broken. I think I saw, like, Magugu put something out about this. Magugu is one of the players and content creators for Team Fox, an AoE2 team. He highlighted that, like, watching it back, it looks broken and it needs to be banned from competitive games and then fixed. And I'd agree. With what I watched, I'm trying to find the clip now. I don't know if anyone's seen it or can find it. But it needs to go. It's way too strong. What happened is, so the way it works, I'm going to try to describe it without, like, can I maybe find it? Can anyone remember what game it was in? I'm trying to remember what game it was in the grand finals. So if I can maybe find it. Because basically, what he done is you can patrol units, but if you do it right, you can layer your units on top of each other. Was it fourth game? So you can layer your units on top of each other to essentially just, like, completely wipe an enemy army. Because what happens is as they patrol, they're no-clipping on each other. So, like, you have multiple units on top of each other mailing away. And that, of course, minimizes the exposure point for your army, right? So, like, it's a broken thing. It was third game. Thank you, Don. Can you remember how far in it was? Do you guys remember? Check Discord. Thank you. Thank you, Crackety. Appreciate you, buddy. So it is at 6:52. So we'll go 6:52. So this was, you'll see it in action. It's pretty ridiculous. 6:52:52. Okay, yeah, this is the thing. So this is broken, right? And this is in a game that Hera lost, right? But this is absolutely broken. So what's happening is they are running over each other. They shouldn't be able to do this. And what it's doing is it's minimizing the hit point for melee units because obviously less of them are able to get in. But you have like 3 times the units on the same spot hitting back. Look at how quickly a counter to this cavalry gets wiped, right? It's insanely broken. But that is utilization of a broken game mechanic that has not been banned, has not been fixed. I don't blame Hera at all. His job as a competitive player is to do everything within the rule set to win, right? If it's banned or if it's hacking, it's different. But if it's not banned from the rule set, if it's not cheating outside the game, I don't see the problem, right? Like, and people, no, I don't like the organize to fail thing because here's the thing I'm going to say. Like, this has been in the game for years. Devs haven't fixed it. People haven't been banning it. So this is like an oversight. This is one of those oh no moments. I was trying to find the one from, wait, did we play my music again? So I was trying to find the one from Dota 2. So there's something that was done in TI3. Here you go, the fountain hook. And this is in that same loo. No one thought about this until it was done. So the way this works, and yes, you're seeing the stupidity of that on your screen right now. Does that look balanced to you? No. In fact, the Alliance owner, there's even an infamous clip of him going, how is that even balanced? Right? This was insane. So what this was is they discovered this hero here has a skill that sends your teammate back to your base after a delay. And this hero here has a hook, which grabs someone and pulls them. Funny interaction there. You throw out the hook, but then the hook pulls back to where you are at the time of connection. So what players done, what they discovered that they could do, Na'Vi turned around this game because of it. They kept hooking the carry, timing it perfectly, and dragging it into the fountain where you have the equivalent of 15 keeps attacking. Did they get banned for this? No. They were revered. The geniuses, the comeback of it, the incredibleness. They had found something so absurdly broken. And it wasn't banned. Because Valve didn't have a rulebook for that. Right? They didn't have a rulebook saying you can't fountain hook. Now, if they didn't fix it, they would have probably put a rulebook in place with that rule for the future. But instead, it was allowed because it was within the rule set. They had done nothing wrong. And that's the importance I think that people miss here. As stupid as this looks, right? Make a ruling. I had a pre-season 9 invitational, and I made a ruling mid-tournament because it was like very low budget that Roboticons couldn't be used because they were bugged. The difference here is these players have been practicing for RedBull Wololo for months. You can't just make a judge ruling like that. But it needs to happen afterwards now, I think. I think what needs to happen is the devs need to fix it. And probably in the meantime, we might see some players like some tournaments just say you can't have it, right? Like, the weird part to me is if it's existed in the game all these years, why has no one else used it up until now? And don't tell me they're too honorable or any crap like that. You're a pro, you want to win. It seems reasonable, do it, right? So, like, that's my take on that. Hera's not to blame for winning, right? This is an oversight on, like, a developmental balance side. It's not even a RedBull oversight, right? Like, they're not... RedBull is not experts on everything in the game, right? This is the thing, right? So, like, with that in mind, props to Hera on getting the win. Funnily enough, it didn't matter. Viper turns it around because he's absolute god. It was actually an insane comeback from him. But I think AoE 2 done really well. Also, the people in the community were insanely welcoming to me, right? Some of them, a lot of them, I figured they wouldn't remember me. Most did. And they were so welcome. They're so happy to see me again. They were so welcoming to the outsiders, right? The AoE 4 people, the Age of Myth people, the AoE 1 people. They went out of their way, right? And that is important. So important. And it leads into this next part. I am saddened that there were apparently some people who were opinionated in Twitch chat or on Reddit or whatever about 4 being there or Myth being there. And you know what? Right now, I imagine there's a few people in the chat that's like, yeah, go off on 1, KP. Shoot him down. Could have. Maybe. If some of you hadn't seen pigs rolling in the muck and decided to join them. You know, when you look at 2 and 4 and all these scenes, you think RedBull has millions and millions of dollars, right? Like, they could wipe their ass with stacks of cash and never run out. Why are they doing Age Off? Do you guys ever think it's because they love the scene? And they love the people in it? And they love the interactions they get in it? Because that's all I felt at the castle. Everyone loving that everyone was there. I remember I finished my cast for Age of Mythology and T-Knight and Dave came up. Like, insane cast, man. You set such a, such a level for this now. Like, wow, right? Like, the positivity, the shared experience, the love that was there in that castle. And I think what people often forget is when you look at Twitch and you look at Reddit, it's vocal minorities with opinions, because opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one. A lot of those opinions can be wrong. But what I'm disappointed by is what we needed to do was completely rise above it. Wowing and then using like the fact they shot first to shoot back doesn't make us look better, right? Like, I'm always reminded of the classic when you see 2 people arguing, right? Like kids. You're like, oh my god, they both look immature. And then I'm always reminded of, like, the perfect example was, like, in Counter-Strike, there was a guy where this girl went off on an insane one on a broadcast. I can't remember now. I don't like I led with this girl, but, like, it's the way people remember it because it was polarizing. It was on a women's broadcast. I forget his name, but he said that the team underperformed. And she just went into him. She's like, who are you to even be here? Get off this stage. And do you know what he done? Ignored it. He's like, just try to get on the show. That was the parent-child dynamic. If you have a kid and they start moaning, do you get on the floor and roll around crying like you're in an Asda advert? No. No, you don't. You tell them to get their crap together and get a move on. And I don't like that some people decided to take this opportunity because there was someone toxic on Twitch chat, or some people toxic on Twitch chat, to dive into the pool of poop with them. That disappoints me. That made us look bad, right? And you have to realize that from RedBull's perspective, they could do anything. They choose to come and do this because they think it's of worth, but also because they love doing it. I think people discredit that way too much. And I also think between the mud rolling and how we acted originally with AoE 4, I am worried as to whether we're going to get to be involved. And I hope that me and people like Puppy Paw and Marine Lord, even though probably calling everyone bad in your interview is not a good way to go, I hope that the people that they saw from 4 were good enough ambassadors for them to go, no, we do like these guys. We do like this scene. We do want to be a part of this. Because when everything got announced before, I understand that people were upset about the level of involvement, but you can't tell me that we didn't act entitled. I said it. We got given something, and we said we wanted more. When we were entitled to nothing. And I'm saying that as someone who puts more hours into this scene than almost anyone else, as someone who puts more hours into this scene than anyone else who makes money out of it. That we done fudged up. And this just kind of made it worse. I'm not going to highlight the people that decided to take the bait on this, but like, this was bait being set and we nibbled on it. And we didn't need to. Right? I think we set ourselves up for a disappointing situation there. Because there will always be this kind of crap. If I go on Reddit right now and put in killer pitch, how many people here think I suck as a caster? Don's going to put a 1, of course. But like, you know, how many people really think I suck as a caster? I mean, I'm assuming probably next to no one because you're all here, right? But like, sometimes, yeah. Oh, get out of here. Dude, you're trash. You couldn't even make playoffs for Myth. But like, there are people who say that. Thank you, Anthony, for the Prime sub. Thank you, buddy. But like, people say that. There's people that believe that whole that I suck as a caster, and they're toxic about it. There's no criticism. There's just toxicity, right? Doesn't mean they're right. Just like you have 85,000 people watching AoE 2's games, and probably 30 people maximum are spamming the chat between them about AoE 4 sucking. Is that indicative of the 80,000 people watching? Or is that the vocal minority? Think about when you read like review situations. Unless people incentivize, they're more likely to make a review when they're angry than when they're happy. It's like, I don't like that we basically made out that the entire AoE2 scene is toxic when it's a vocal minority. And then we like kind of brought out our own toxicity. I haven't dove fully deep. I saw initial response. I was like, why are we doing this? So I don't know how toxic we got. But this, I've been over this before so many times, right? And this leads us perfectly into the future. We are too small to pettily punch each other in the gut. The RTS scene is a dying scene. Reality check. It's harder and harder every year to get new generations to come play RTSs. Fact. Because it's a skill set that is hard to begin with and keeps rising in the talent level required. And when we treat the whole industry does this right now in a way like, yeah, that game failed, which I hate to see. I hate that there's the vocal minority that drive this narrative of game failed, thumbs up, right? Like fist, yeah, we done it. Dude, you should want every game to succeed. Every single one of these, I wish nothing but the best for. 2 is a unique game to 4. 4 is a unique game to Myth. These are all entirely different games that will apply to different audiences. The worry that went around that Age of Myth was going to take our jobs, and then 4 was like, good, like, you know, 2 was going to take, 2 was like, 4 was going to take our jobs. No, they don't. They build their own community. They always do. Right? Like, some can do, like, the crazy part is some can do more damage to others because of the negative spiral, not because of the positive spiral. The positive spiral, rising tides lift all ships, right? But, like, there are examples of RTSs recently that the damage they've done with expectations and everything else around it has essentially killed another game. Is that what you guys want? Do you want to like, is this like a, I like to imagine everyone watching doesn't want this, but like, is this what some people want? Like, dude, I'm about to fall off the side of a cliff, so let me just drag you down with me. Sort of, like, because that's how it feels. And the weird part is, like, when I see these type of community revolts, it's not that you're about to fall off the side of a cliff or like you're bleeding out, so let's shoot him, right? It's almost like you've got a gun, point it in your own chest to shoot the guy behind you. It's like so double damage, double kill. It's mind-boggling to me that we see this so often at the moment. And we are really in, like, I think a toxic spiral in the wider gaming sphere because the vocal people are always cheering for deaths of games, not just in the Age-of franchise, but wider, instead of praising success. And that hurts me so deeply, man. Like, we need to realize that all these games succeeding is a good thing. When AoE 1, 2, Myth, 4, whichever one does better, more sponsors are looking and going, wow, maybe RTS isn't dying, right? Like, let's say RedBull looked at this and, you know, they done really well. Let's say RedBull's competition, one of their competition looked at this and went, wow, bloody hell, look at the positive attitude around the whole community, successful events, and you know what? No toxicity. Like, these guys are great. We're going to go run an event for 4. We're going to go run an event for Myth. We know that RedBull's got 2 cornered at the moment. That was their biggest show. We want to try to snatch that away before they now take the rest, right? Like, I think people highly underrate, especially in esports, the willingness for people to commit resources on an unparalleled level into some things that can almost seem questionable because RedBull could just go do a Dota 2 event or a Valorant event, right? Or a Fortnite event. I think they do Fortnite, but you know, all these different games they could do, they come here. Why do they come here? Because they are able to justify the marketing value, but more so they love being here. And when people decide to be toxic pieces of they ruin that. And so, like, I'm not even kidding. I know on like a Valve level, right, when they were doing something at an event and a player came along, he's like, I think this would be better. Because his attitude was wrong, the guy flat out said, why are you ruining this for us? And what he meant by that is we do this because we find it fun. That fits, right? Because Valve has Steam. They don't need to run TI. They didn't need to run the majors for years like they did. They could just sit there and milk the fact that they are the go-to platform. But they want to do something special. And it's the same with RedBull. RedBull could just go do Extreme Sports. They could just go and do Dota 2. They could probably just go do Deadlock right now because, let's be honest, its trajectory is looking bigger and better than probably all of these RTSs here combined. Why are they here? Because they love this scene. They love these games. They love this community. But when this type of crap happens, they start to love both a little less, right? There's no, because we're all grown-ups here, right? Like, I've seen the average demographic. You're all, like, most of you are 25 to 40-year-olds. Sorry to the, like, 2-year-old pipsqueak who's watching, but you can't play this like you're a 4-year-old and say, well, he threw a punch first, so I threw a punch. No, dude, you took the bait. And I hope this is something we learn from, because I really want AoE 4 to be involved. I know some people have the opinion that we can do fine without RedBull. Why should we have to, man? They came in and they want to do more, right? And like this whole idea of like, oh, they took money from different tournaments. I don't think that's entirely true. And also the marketing off of this. Like, I try and source sponsorships for tournaments, right? I'm going to go and use this as like an example. Yo, look at how many viewers watched RedBull Wololo and it only had 1 series. Positive spin. So yeah, the future, I hope, is bright. I think in some ways, RedBull has their work cut out for them. That castle set such an insanely high standard, it's going to be tough to eclipse it. They are going to struggle, I think, to make a better event. And that's not an insult to what they do. It's just they done such a good job. The big improvement would, of course, be the technical issues, but I think that was always going to happen. I think people need to give it a bit of slack. They went to a castle in the middle of bloody nowhere. If you remember the early Heidelbergs, if anyone watched, they had their own technical issues. So, like, they have to overcome a new place. I hope they go there, and I hope they're able to improve that viewing experience, because I can't fully talk about the online viewing experience because I was there in person. Very different, right? But my experience in person, RedBull, as always, are one of my favorite TOs to work with. They are so understanding. They bend over backwards. They go out of their way with the loot and the gear, which I'll show you some of in a sec. And they're an absolute gem, right? Like, actually, I'm going to show you some now, guys. You saw the hoodies, right? We have scarves. They do all these on a limited edition run, by the way. It's only for this event, right? So you can only get them in person. So this is one thing I got. This is a scroll holder, and it's got my RedBull supply inside. It also has a scroll, and then at the very end, coolest of all, you ready for this? I can now give my stamp of approval to people's builds. And not just that, you'll know if it came from me. Because that is a one-of-a-kind pigeon stamp of approval. Right? That's, like, small things like that shows how much they care. All right? Who goes and puts this much thought into things to make for their event? You have to give so much of a crap about what you're doing. And remember, guys, I'm not an AoE2 caster. Right? Oh, KP, they just done an extra one for you. Yeah, but they put the extra effort in, right? The amount of cool things here. I've even got mouse pads. Honestly, let me bring the mouse pads over. I also just love the look of their books. So these are, I snatched a few of these. These are the books that the players are using for their notes. I love these. So, mouse pad. That's a sick mouse pad. They even small things, like all the small things they think about. Like they gave me some pins. And by the way, guys, there's only 100 of these that exist. I have 3 of the 100 that exist. These ones, to my understanding, only about 30 or 40 of exist at all. Right? This, only 1 exists of. You ready for this? Because the flags this year were even better. Let it be known as well, I was the first Age of Empires 4 invitee to get a flag, so they can all suck now. They go beyond. It's insane. I'm going to have to like do some on my back wall. And you know what the crazy part is? They do this all, and then afterwards, like I don't think people realize the type of money they put in and what happens to it. Afterwards, it just gets like pulled down by an outside team, right? Like all the little drafting pieces as well. Like I saved a few of them around the back here. So I've got Japan, which doesn't show well on a green screen. Oranos and Frey. Right? Like small details like this. Like it's rare that you see someone who cares as much as RedBull does. Especially for such a fleeting scene. AoE has always been a legacy brand. Yet they care enough to be there time and time again. Like, even the simple things. I snatched some of my outfit. All the simple things, like proper leather-made satchel that goes on your side that you can put a phone in, but other than that, you're not going to use. Like the belts, the tunics. Once again, who cares this much? Right? Who? About a scene as small as we are. Because I'm not trying to size shame, but let's be real. We are small. Oh, also the question. I will say the questionable scarves for Spain. But I mean, at night it got really cold. It's the style as well, man. Like all the small details. When I look at the way they create things, even things like the hoodie, the fact that they just went for the weird choice of making one sleeve yellow, one sleeve red, right? And it fits the brand. This is a community that cares. They fly out co-streamers for Germany, for Spain. I think they had another country there as well. Why? They don't need to, right? You ask to be involved and they do whatever they can. They bend over backwards, right? And that's someone that should be praised. I don't like that in the lead up to Wololo, there was an element of like, well, I mean, like, why should we even, like, why do we need them? We'll just go do it our own. Is it not easy if we do it with them? Have them part of the journey to build something great, memorable, that lasts. Like, these guys are incredible, and I will always support them, right? They have treated me with nothing but respect. I also can assure you that, like, next time, I'm going to go out my way to be involved, if there is a next time, helping them with rule sets and everything else. So you can, like, stamp of approval, someone who basically lives and breathes more AoE4 than almost anyone in the scene will help out as much as possible. Because they care. They heard that, and they were over the moon when they heard that. They're like, really? You sure? It's like, yes. Anything to help. Because we've got to prove, like, honestly, we've got to prove that we deserve to have them. I think there's been, in the past, in the build-up, and like especially 2 months ago, there was way too much the other direction. Like, why do we need them? Well, because we want more people in. Because I don't think anyone's ever thought about what happens if EGC disappears tomorrow, which it could just do for whatever reason, right? Like, grim outlook, but what if Pessi gets hit by a truck? What happens? And some people go, well, like, someone else to take over. Yeah, but like, is the scene better for having only one person at the helm? Or is it better with multiple supporting each other? That's my rounding thought. I mean, if people think Red Bull's a negative to be involved in the scene, I think, quite frankly, you have paid zero attention to anything they've done over the last several years. Red Bull, I hope you're going to be involved in the future. I appreciate you guys involved. Obviously, I appreciate I was invited. I hope there will be again. But I love everything they've done for 1, 2, Myth, and 4. They didn't have to do it for anything but 2. They could have just chosen 2. But they're trying to find a way to justify, to involve on a level that makes sense to them at each stage, these other games. And my hopes is that we, as a community, as Myth, 4, 1, as communities, have all shown we're ready to level up. We're ready to be involved more. Give us 4 players in LAN. We'd be more than happy. Because I think there's a lot of potential here. And they clearly love and believe in it. And the more positive we are, right? I'm not saying don't be critical. If there's something wrong, like we said, Empire Wars could have been good with enough practice, but maybe it's too challenging. The approach matters. I am a firm believer in constructive criticism over flaming. There's a drastic difference between the two. When you watch me cast, I don't say a player sucks. I tell you why the play potentially sucks and why it might not be advisable. I do my best to do that. That's the difference that we need to see in the community. When you roll around in the mud being negative, all you get is people leaving. And I don't want Red Bull Wololo to leave us. I want us to, 10 years from now, go, wow, 17th edition of Red Bull Wololo. What an achievement. Because what people don't realize is Red Bull doesn't hang around long in scenes. And it's not because of like they don't, they like grab and go. It's because they love to be different. When you like, they done an Elden Ring event, they might do 1 more of those ever. They don't hang around this long unless they love a community. They don't invite anything to be involved in that core unless they love the idea of it. So there they are, with open hands, offering you some water while you're in the middle of a desert here in our AoE4 land. Maybe it's about time to start sipping and saying thank you. All right, guys, that's going to be all in this video. We're going to wrap it up now. So if you have watched all the way through the end, I appreciate the support. Let me know if you want to see more of these kind of talking head talks. I don't do them as often, but maybe I should. I think it's a cool way to go. And like I said, I'm the guy at that castle that probably, like, out of all the people that were probably talking, I probably have the most insights overall. Like, yeah, they treated me nothing but great. They were always checking on me. They were always curious. So many of them remember me. Even people that I thought wouldn't remember me. And, you guys might try to make out like, oh, I'm everywhere, but like for them, they might not see me regularly, right? So like, I appreciate them. And I appreciate all you. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you follow. And we just hit 5,000 subs on YouTube, by the way. Big pog on that. Hopefully the first of many more thousands to come. And I'll catch you all on the flip side.